Emily Carter is 25 years old, but sometimes when she looks at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror above the sink, she feels much older. She stands there in the pale morning light of a small rented house on Ashfield Street in Manchester, brushing her dark brown hair with a comb that is missing 3 teeth. The window is fogged from the cold. The radiator does not work properly again. Her fingers are red from washing dishes in icy water the night before. Downstairs, she can already hear Margaret's voice. "Emily, are you still in there? Some people in this house have real things to do." Emily closes her eyes for 1 second. Just one. Then she opens them and smiles at her reflection, even though the smile does not reach her eyes. "I'm coming," she calls. Her voice is gentle. Too gentle, her best friend Sophie always says. Too soft for a world that keeps pushing her down. Emily puts on her faded blue sweater, smooths the sleeves, and steps out into the narrow hallway. The carpet is old, the walls are yellowing, and the house smells of boiled tea, dust, and resentment. In the kitchen, Margaret Whitmore sits like a queen at the small table, wearing her pearl earrings and her permanent expression of disappointment. Daniel, Emily's husband, stands near the counter, scrolling through his phone. He is handsome in a tired, careless way, with blonde hair, sharp cheekbones, and the kind of smile that once made Emily believe he could protect her from anything. Now, he rarely looks at her. "There's no milk," Margaret says. "I'll buy some after work," Emily replies. Margaret laughs coldly. "With what money?" Daniel finally looks up. "Mom, don't start." "I'm not starting anything," Margaret says. "I'm simply asking how a grown woman can work 6 days a week and still have nothing." Emily lowers her eyes. She works at a small bakery near Deansgate, standing all day behind the counter, serving coffee, bread, and pastries to people who never imagine she often goes home hungry. Most of her wages go toward rent, bills, Daniel's debts, and Margaret's endless complaints. Daniel had promised things would be different after the wedding. He had promised love. He had promised a home. He had promised that his mother only needed time to accept Emily. But time has passed, and Margaret's heart has not softened. If anything, it has become sharper. Emily reaches for the kettle. "I can make tea without milk." Margaret pushes her cup away. "Of course you can. Poverty teaches many useless talents." Daniel sighs. "Emily, just go to work. I'll deal with it." But he never deals with it. Emily takes her coat from the hook beside the door. It is thin, secondhand, and missing one button. She wraps her scarf around her neck and steps outside into the gray morning. Manchester is wet and cold. Rain hangs in the air like mist. Cars hiss along the road. People walk quickly with their heads down. Emily walks to the bus stop with her hands deep in her pockets. Her phone vibrates. It is Sophie. "Are you alive?" Emily smiles properly for the first time that morning. "Barely." Sophie replies almost instantly. "That witch again?" Emily types, "Always." Sophie sends 3 angry emojis. Then, "Lunch break. Call me. I'm serious." Emily puts the phone away as the bus arrives. At the bakery, warmth hits her face the moment she steps inside. Butter, sugar, cinnamon, fresh bread. For a few hours every day, this place feels less cruel than the rest of her life. "Morning, Emily," says Mr. Harris, the owner, a kind man in his 60s, with flour on his apron and tired blue eyes. "Morning. You look pale." "I'm fine. You always say that." Emily ties her apron and begins arranging croissants in the display case. Customers come and go. Office workers, students, mothers with prams, an old man who buys the same seeded loaf every Tuesday and Friday. Emily smiles at everyone. She is good at smiling. At noon, during her break, she stands behind the bakery in the narrow alley, holding a cup of tea between both hands. Rain taps softly on the metal bins. She calls Sophie. "Tell me everything," Sophie says immediately. Emily laughs softly. "Hello to you too." "No. No polite nonsense today. What did Margaret do?" Emily leans against the brick wall. She complained about milk. Milk? Yes. I swear that woman could turn sunshine into a funeral. Emily says nothing. Sophie's voice softens. Em, you can't live like this forever. I know. Do you? Emily watches rainwater run along the pavement. Daniel is under pressure. Daniel is always under pressure. Funny how you're the one carrying it. Emily closes her eyes. She remembers being 22, meeting Daniel at a charity event where she was helping serve food. He had looked at her like she mattered. He had brought her flowers. He had called her beautiful. He had said he loved how kind she was. Kind. Now that same kindness feels like a chain around her neck. There's something else, Sophie says. What? I saw Oliver yesterday. Emily becomes still. Oliver Bennett. The name enters her chest quietly, but it does not leave quietly. Oliver was her friend before Daniel, before marriage, before Margaret, before the house on Ashfield Street. He grew up in the same poor neighborhood as Emily, delivered newspapers with her when they were teenagers, walked her home from evening shifts, fixed her broken bicycle, and once, when Emily's father died, sat outside her door all night because she said she did not want to talk, but did not want to be alone. He loved her. Everyone knew. Emily knew. But Oliver never forced his heart on her. He only stood nearby, steady and patient, while Daniel arrived with charm, confidence, and promises. What did he say? Emily asks. He asked about you. Emily looks down at her shoes. Oh, he still cares. Sophie. I know. You're married. I know. But caring is not a crime. Emily's throat tightens. How is he? He looks good. Sad, but good. He's working with his uncle's construction company now. Doing well, I think. Emily imagines Oliver's warm brown eyes, his quiet smile, his hands always rough from work. A different kind of man from Daniel. Less polished, more real. I should go back in, Emily says. Em. Yes? Please don't disappear inside that house, Emily whispers. I'm trying not to. That evening, Emily comes home with milk, bread, and discounted vegetables from the shop. The sky is already dark. Her feet ache. Her shoulders ache. Her heart aches in a way she does not know how to explain. Inside the house, Margaret is sitting in the living room watching television. Daniel is not home. You're late, Margaret says. The bus was delayed. Margaret looks at the shopping bag. Did you buy the right milk this time? Emily takes it to the kitchen without answering. She cooks dinner quietly. Vegetable soup. Toast. Nothing special, but warm. When Daniel finally comes home, his coat smells of rain and cigarettes. I thought you quit, Emily says gently. He avoids her eyes. Bad day. Margaret appears in the doorway. My poor boy works himself to death while some people play shopgirl. Emily grips the wooden spoon. Daniel says nothing. They eat in silence. Margaret complains that the soup is too thin. Daniel checks his phone under the table. Emily watches them both and suddenly feels as if she is sitting with strangers. Then the doorbell rings. All three look up. No one visits them at night. Emily wipes her hands and goes to the door. A man in a dark coat stands outside, holding a leather folder. He is middle-aged, clean-shaven, with serious eyes. Mrs. Emily Whitmore? He asks. Emily hesitates. She still struggles with that name. Whitmore. Daniel's name. Margaret's name. Yes? My name is Thomas Reed. I'm a solicitor from Reed and Lawson. May I speak with you? Behind her, Margaret's voice cuts through the hallway. A solicitor? What has she done? Emily's face burns. I haven't done anything. Thomas Reed glances past her. This concerns a private matter. It is about the estate of Mrs. Eleanor Ashford. Emily freezes. Eleanor Ashford. She has not heard that name in years. Margaret moves closer. Who is Eleanor Ashford? Emily's voice is barely audible. She was my mother's aunt. Daniel appears behind Margaret now, suddenly interested. The solicitor nods. Mrs. Ashford passed away 3 weeks ago. You are named in her will. The hallway becomes silent. Even the television seems quieter. Emily grips the doorframe. Named how? Thomas Reed looks directly at her, as her sole heir. Thomas Reed looks directly at her, as her sole heir. For a moment, Emily does not understand the words. They are simple words, clear words, words a child could understand. But they do not belong to her life. They do not fit inside this narrow hallway with its peeling wallpaper, damp carpet, and the smell of old tea. They do not fit beside Margaret's sharp eyes or Daniel's sudden silence. They do not fit inside Emily's tired heart, which has learned to expect very little from the world. Sole heir. The words hang in the air like a door opening somewhere far away. Emily's fingers tighten around the edge of the door. I think there must be a mistake, she says softly. Thomas Reed does not smile. He looks like a man who has delivered shocking news many times and has learned that silence can be kinder than excitement. There is no mistake, Mrs. Whitmore. Mrs. Eleanor Ashford left her entire estate to you. Margaret lets out a short laugh behind Emily. Entire estate? What estate? Eleanor Ashford was probably some lonely old woman with a teapot and a cracked wardrobe. Thomas Reed turns his calm eyes toward Margaret. Mrs. Ashford owned Ashford House in Alderley Edge, 2 commercial properties in Manchester, a cottage in the Lake District, several investment accounts, and a private collection of jewelry and paintings. There are also liquid funds held in trust. The hallway changes, not physically. The yellow walls remain yellow. The old light above them still flickers. The rain still taps the front step outside, but something invisible shifts. Margaret's mouth opens, then closes. Daniel's phone lowers slowly in his hand. Emily stands very still. She hears the rain. She hears her own breathing. She hears her heartbeat beating too fast, too loudly. That cannot be right, she whispers. Thomas Reed opens the leather folder and takes out a thick envelope. Mrs. Ashford was very clear. She left instructions that you are to be contacted personally. She also left a letter for you. He holds the envelope out. Emily looks at it as if it might burn her fingers. The paper is cream-colored, heavy, expensive. Her name is written across the front in elegant blue ink. Emily Carter. Not Emily Whitmore. Emily Carter. Her maiden name. The sight of it almost makes her cry. She takes the envelope with trembling hands. Margaret steps forward quickly. Let me see that. Emily pulls the envelope close to her chest without thinking. It is addressed to me. Margaret's eyes narrow. Do not become rude just because some lawyer has come here with fairy tales. Daniel finally speaks. Mum, stop. But his voice is not protective. It is careful, calculating, almost nervous. He looks at Thomas Reed with a new politeness. Maybe we should all sit down. Thomas Reed does not move. This first conversation is for Mrs. Whitmore alone. Margaret stiffens. She is my daughter-in-law. This is my son's house. Emily almost laughs, but nothing comes out. This is not Daniel's house. It is rented. Emily pays most of the rent. Margaret treats it like a throne room because no one has ever stopped her. Thomas Reed remains calm. The will concerns Emily only. I've been instructed to speak with her privately. Mrs. Whitmore, would you be willing to come to my office tomorrow morning? Daniel answers before Emily can. Of course she will. Emily turns to him. Daniel's face has changed. The tired, careless expression is gone. He is alert now. His eyes are bright, almost hungry. He steps closer and puts a hand on her shoulder. This is wonderful, Em. Really wonderful. The hand feels strange on her shoulder. It has been weeks since he touched her gently. Margaret notices it too. Her face shifts from shock to calculation. Yes, of course, she says, suddenly softer. We are only surprised. You must understand, Mr. Reed. Emily never told us she had wealthy relatives. Emily looks down. She never told them because she did not know. She had met Eleanor Ashford only a handful of times as a child. Her mother had called Eleanor difficult, proud, and distant. When Emily's mother died, Eleanor sent a black car and white lilies. But she did not stay for the funeral meal. After Emily's father died 3 years later, Eleanor sent money for the burial and one short note that Emily kept in a biscuit tin for years. "I am sorry, child. Grief has a long shadow. One day, when you are older, you may understand why I stayed away." Emily never understood. She was 17 then, alone, poor, and trying not to drown in bills and loneliness. She wanted a family member to knock on the door and say, "Come home with me. I will take care of you." No one came. So Emily worked. She studied when she could. She cleaned hotel rooms. She served tables. She delivered leaflets in the rain. She built a life out of scraps and silence. And now, a dead woman, a woman who had stayed away, has left her everything. Thomas Reed gives Emily a business card. "Tomorrow at 10. My office is on King Street. Please bring identification. I also advise you not to sign anything or make any decisions until we have spoken properly." His eyes briefly move toward Daniel and Margaret. Emily understands the warning, even if Daniel pretends not to. "Thank you," she says. Thomas Reed nods and steps back into the rain. When Emily closes the door, the house is silent, a heavy, waiting silence. Margaret is the first to break it. "Well," she says. One word, but inside it, there are 100 knives. Daniel smiles at Emily. This is incredible." He tries to take her hand. She lets him because she's too stunned to move away. Margaret sits down on the bottom stair as if her legs have suddenly become weak. "Ashford House," she murmurs. "Alderley Edge." Daniel looks at his mother. "Do you know it?" Margaret's face tightens. Everyone knows Ashford House. It is old money. Real old money. Emily looks at the envelope in her hands. She wants to open it alone. She wants to hear Eleanor's voice without Margaret breathing over her shoulder and Daniel watching every movement. But the kitchen, the hallway, the living room, every corner of this house feels crowded now. Daniel squeezes her fingers. "Open it." Emily looks at him. "I want to read it by myself." His smile freezes for half a second. "Of course. Yes, of course." Margaret stands. "By yourself?" "Emily, this concerns the family." The word family lands hard. Family. Emily thinks of cold dinners, of Margaret counting slices of bread, of Daniel letting insults pass over the table like bad weather, of herself crying quietly in the bathroom while the shower runs so no one hears. She looks at Margaret. "It concerns me." Margaret's face darkens before Emily would have apologized. Tonight, she does not. She walks upstairs. Her knees tremble. Her hand slides along the banister because she suddenly feels as if the house might tilt beneath her feet. Daniel calls her name once, gently. Margaret says something under her breath. Emily does not stop. In the bedroom, she closes the door and locks it. The small room is cold. Their bed is unmade. Daniel's clothes are scattered on a chair. Emily's side of the wardrobe holds 3 dresses, 2 sweaters, work trousers, and a shoebox full of old letters, photographs, and memories too painful to throw away. She sits on the edge of the bed and stares at the envelope. Emily Carter, her name before marriage, her name before she became smaller inside someone else's house. Her hands shake as she opens it. Inside is a letter, several pages, written by hand. Emily begins to read. "My dear Emily, if this letter has reached you, then I'm gone, and perhaps that's the only reason I finally have the courage to tell you the truth." Emily stops breathing. The room seems to move closer around her. She reads on. "I have watched your life from a distance for many years. That sentence may hurt you. It should. I deserve your anger. I knew when your mother died. I knew when your father followed her into the grave. I knew you were left nearly alone. I knew you struggled. I knew you worked until your hands cracked. I knew you married Daniel Whitmore. I knew his mother looked down on you. I knew more than you would ever guess." Emily presses a hand to her mouth. Tears blur the ink. "I did not stay away because I did not care. I stayed away because I was afraid my presence would bring old danger back into your life. Your mother and I were not separated by pride alone. We were separated by a secret that began before you were born." Emily lowers the letter. A secret. Downstairs, she hears voices. Daniel and Margaret are talking low and fast. She cannot make out the words, but she knows the tone. Planning. Wondering. Wanting. She looks back at the letter. Your mother, Caroline, was my niece, but she was also the daughter I never had. When she was young, she fell in love with your father, Peter Carter, a good man without fortune, but with a loyal heart. I approved of him. Your grandfather did not. He believed bloodlines and money mattered more than kindness. There was an argument, a terrible one. Caroline left Ashford House and married Peter without permission. Emily has heard pieces of this before, but never like this. Your grandfather changed his will in anger. Later, when he was dying, he regretted it, but by then, others had become involved. Men who had built their lives around our family fortune. Men who did not want Caroline or her children to inherit anything. Documents disappeared. Signatures were forged. Lies were told. Your mother tried to fight them, but then she became ill. Emily's heart pounds. Her mother had died from a sudden heart condition. That is what everyone said. One day, she was tired. Then she was in hospital. Then she was gone. Emily reads faster. I've spent years putting right what was stolen. I hired investigators. I fought in silence. I gathered evidence. I discovered that the people who cheated your mother were closer than I imagined. Some are dead now. Some are not. I'm leaving you everything. Not because I pity you, but because it was always meant to be yours. Emily's tears fall onto the page. There is more. Be careful of anyone who suddenly loves you after hearing the word inheritance. Emily closes her eyes. Daniel's face appears in her mind. His sudden smile. His hand on her shoulder. His voice calling her M again, as if love can be switched on like a lamp. She reads the final lines. Trust Thomas Reed. Trust the documents I have left. And if you need help beyond the law, find Oliver Bennett. He is more connected to this story than you know. Emily's entire body goes cold. Oliver. Why would Eleanor know Oliver? Why would Oliver be connected to this? She reads the line again. Find Oliver Bennett. A knock sounds at the bedroom door. Emily jumps. Em? Daniel's voice is soft. Are you all right? She folds the letter quickly and holds it against her chest. I need a minute. You have had a minute. The softness in his voice thins. Emily looks at the locked door. I said, I need a minute. Silence. Then Margaret's voice comes from behind him. This is ridiculous, Daniel. She's acting as if we are strangers. Emily almost whispers, Aren't we? But she says nothing. Daniel knocks again. Emily, open the door. We should talk about this together. She looks at the letter. Be careful of anyone who suddenly loves you after hearing the word inheritance. Her fingers tighten. Not tonight. Daniel exhales sharply. Fine. His footsteps move away, but slowly, as if he wants her to feel every step. Emily sits motionless for a long time. Then she takes out her phone. Her thumb hovers over Sophie's name. But then another name rises in her mind. Oliver Bennett. She has not called him in almost 2 years. Not since her wedding. He had come, wearing a dark suit that did not quite fit him, standing at the back of the small registry office with pain hidden behind a brave smile. He hugged her afterward and said he hoped Daniel would make her happy. She had lied and said he already did. After that, distance grew. Not anger, not cruelty, just the sad distance of a heart trying to survive. Emily opens Sophie's contact instead. Sophie answers on the second ring. Em? What happened? Emily tries to speak, but her voice breaks. Sophie becomes alert immediately. Emily, are you hurt? No. No. Something happened. What? A solicitor came. A what? A solicitor. Eleanor Ashford died. Your rich great aunt? Emily almost laughs through tears. Apparently very rich. There is silence on the line. How rich? Emily looks at the letter, the envelope, the business card. I think very. Sophie swears softly. Emily, that is. Wait, why are you crying? Because she knew. Eleanor knew everything. She knew I was struggling. She knew about Daniel and Margaret. She knew about all of it. Sophie's voice changes, becoming gentle. Oh, Em. And she says there is a secret. About my mother. About money stolen from her. About danger. Danger? Yes. What kind of danger? I do not know yet. Emily hesitates. She also says I should find Oliver. Another silence. This one is different. Sophie speaks carefully. Oliver? Yes. Why? It says he is connected to the story. Sophie says nothing for a moment too long. Emily notices. Soph, I need to tell you something. Emily sits straighter. What? I did not tell you before because I was not sure it mattered. But when I saw Oliver yesterday, he looked like he wanted to say more. He asked if you were safe. Safe? Yes. Not happy. Not well. Safe. Emily's skin prickles. Why would he ask that? I do not know. But maybe you should call him. Emily looks toward the bedroom door. Not from here. Then come to mine. I cannot. It is late. So, get a taxi. I do not have money for a taxi. Sophie makes a sound of frustration. You may have inherited half of Cheshire, and you are still worrying about taxi fare. It is not real yet. It is real enough to make Margaret dangerous. Emily looks at the letter again. Downstairs, a cupboard closes hard. Margaret is angry. Daniel is probably pacing. The house feels smaller than ever. I will go to the solicitor tomorrow, Emily says. I'm coming with you. You have work. I will call in sick. Sophie. No. This is not a milk argument. This is life-changing. And I do not trust Daniel within 10 miles of a will. Emily wants to defend him automatically. The old habit rises. Daniel is stressed. Daniel is tired. Daniel does not mean to hurt her, but the words feel weak now. She does not say them. All right, she whispers. That night, Emily does not sleep. Daniel comes to bed around midnight. He tries the door first. When he finds it locked, he knocks once. Emily unlocks it because she does not want to fight loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He enters quietly. For a moment, he looks like the man she married. Damp blonde hair, tired eyes, vulnerable mouth. He stands by the door, not coming closer. I am sorry about Mom, he says. Emily sits under the blanket, still wearing her sweater. You always are. The words surprise them both. Daniel blinks. What does that mean? It means you are always sorry after she hurts me, but never while she's doing it. His jaw tightens. That is not fair. Emily laughs softly, without humor. No, it is not. He runs a hand through his hair. I'm trying, Emily. Are you? He looks wounded. Once, that look would have made her apologize. Tonight she is too tired. Daniel sits on the bed. This inheritance, it could change everything for us. There it is. For us. Emily watches him. What do you mean? He leans closer, voice warming. We could pay off debts, move somewhere better, start again. Maybe Mum could have her own place nearby. You could stop working at the bakery. We could finally breathe. It is a beautiful picture. Too beautiful. Painted too quickly. Yesterday, he had barely looked at her. Tonight, he is planning their future with her money. We do not know anything yet, she says. But we will. Tomorrow. He smiles. I can come with you. Thomas Reed said private. Daniel's smile fades. I am your husband, I know. Then why are you shutting me out? Emily looks at the cracked ceiling. Because for a long time, I've felt shut out of my own marriage. Daniel says nothing. The sentence fills the room. Emily waits for anger. Instead, he becomes quiet. That frightens her more. Finally, he says, I made mistakes. She looks at him. I let Mum get in the way. I know that. But this could be our chance, Em. He reaches for her hand. I still love you. The words should warm her. They do not. They land like something late, too late, left out in the rain. Emily gently pulls her hand away. I need sleep. Daniel's face hardens for just a second. Then he nods and lies down beside her, leaving space between them. In the dark, Emily keeps her eyes open. She thinks of Eleanor's warning. She thinks of Oliver. She thinks of the girl she used to be before Daniel, before Margaret, before poverty became not just a condition, but a voice inside her telling her she should accept scraps because scraps were all she deserved. By morning, rain has stopped. The sky over Manchester is pale and washed clean. Emily wakes before the alarm. Daniel is already awake too, sitting on the edge of the bed, checking his phone. When he sees her move, he smiles too quickly. Big day. Emily nods. Downstairs, Margaret has made tea. Real tea with milk. She has also made toast and set out butter as if hosting a guest. The small kindness feels more insulting than yesterday's cruelty. Good morning, Emily, Margaret says. Emily stops in the kitchen doorway. Margaret never says good morning. Daniel looks between them. Mum made breakfast. So I see. Margaret smiles tightly. You have an important day. You should not go on an empty stomach. Emily looks at the toast. Yesterday, poverty taught useless talents. Today, inheritance earns butter. She pours herself water instead. I am meeting Sophie. Margaret's smile disappears. Why? She is coming with me. Daniel stands. Emily, we talked about this. No, you talked. I listened. Margaret's cup hits the saucer. Do not speak to your husband like that. Emily turns to her. Please do not speak to me like I'm a servant. The kitchen becomes very quiet. Even Daniel looks shocked. Margaret's eyes blaze. Excuse me? Emily's heart hammers, but she continues. I'm going to the solicitor. Sophie is coming with me. I will tell you what I choose to tell you when I come back. Daniel steps toward her. This attitude is not you. Emily looks at him. Maybe it is. She takes her coat and leaves before fear can drag her back. Outside, the air is cold, but it feels easier to breathe. At the bus stop, Sophie is already waiting in a red coat, her curly black hair pulled into a messy bun, her eyes sharp with worry and anger. She is small, fierce, and loyal in a way Emily has never known how to deserve. The moment she sees Emily, she hugs her hard. You look like you have been awake all night. I have. Sophie pulls back and studies her face. Did he try to be sweet? Emily smiles sadly. Yes, of course he did. Men like Daniel smell money the way sharks smell blood. Emily looks around nervously. Do not say that so loud. I will hire a brass band and sing it if necessary. Despite everything, Emily laughs. The laugh is small, but real. They take the bus into the city. Sophie stays close to Emily the entire way, talking about ordinary things at first. Her annoying manager, a customer who tried to return a half-eaten sandwich, the terrible price of train tickets. She does it deliberately, giving Emily something normal to hold. But as King Street approaches, Sophie grows quiet. Reed and Lawson occupies the second floor of an old stone building with polished brass letters beside the door. Inside, the reception smells of leather, coffee, and expensive paper. Emily feels suddenly aware of her thin coat, worn shoes, and cheap handbag with fraying straps. Sophie notices. Stand tall, she whispers. Emily straightens. Thomas Reed meets them in a conference room with tall windows overlooking the street. He does not seem surprised to see Sophie. Mrs. Whitmore, miss? Sophie Lane, Sophie says. Best friend. Emotional support. Witness. Occasional menace. For the first time, Thomas Reed almost smiles. Very well. Emily sits down, hands folded tightly in her lap. Thomas places several folders on the table. Before we begin, I must confirm. Do you wish Miss Lane to remain during this conversation? Yes, Emily says immediately. Good. He opens the first folder. Mrs. Ashford's estate is substantial. The estimated value, pending formal probate, is approximately £12.8 million. Emily hears Sophie inhale sharply. Emily herself does not react at first. The number is too large. It feels fictional, like saying the moon now belongs to her. 12 million? She whispers. Approximately. Some assets may vary in valuation. Sophie grips Emily's arm under the table. Thomas continues. Ashford House is currently unoccupied, except for a caretaker. Mrs. Ashford requested that you be allowed access immediately if you choose. However, ownership transfer will proceed through probate, and there are conditions attached to certain parts of the estate. Emily's stomach tightens. Conditions? Yes. Not conditions that prevent inheritance, but conditions for protection. He slides a document toward her. Mrs. Ashford created a private trust. The trust prevents any spouse, creditor, or third party from claiming control over the primary assets. In simple terms, your husband cannot access, sell, borrow against, or manage the estate unless you legally grant him authority. Sophie whispers, Thank God. Emily stares at the document. Did she know Daniel had debts? Thomas Reed's expression becomes careful. Yes. Emily closes her eyes. Of course she did. What kind of debts? Sophie asks. That is not my information to disclose in full unless Mrs. Whitmore asks me to explain what Mrs. Ashford documented. Emily opens her eyes. Explain. Thomas nods. Mrs. Ashford's investigator found that Mr. Daniel Whitmore has unpaid personal loans, credit card debt, and at least one private borrowing arrangement connected to gambling. Emily feels the blood drain from her face. Gambling? Sophie turns slowly toward her. Emily. Emily shakes her head. No, Daniel does not gamble. Thomas Reed does not argue. He simply takes another paper from the folder. Bank statements, betting accounts, transfers. Some were made after your marriage. Emily cannot touch the paper. The room seems to tilt. Daniel had said debts. She had assumed old bills, failed business expenses, emergency borrowing. She had worked extra shifts to help him. She had skipped lunches. She had worn broken shoes. She had listened to Margaret call her useless while her wages vanished into Daniel's problems. Gambling. Sophie's voice is low and dangerous. How much? Thomas looks at Emily. Approximately £47,000, not including interest. Emily presses both hands to her mouth. For a few seconds, she cannot hear anything. 47,000. That is not a mistake. That is not bad luck. That is a second life hidden behind her back. She remembers Daniel coming home late. Cigarette smell. Phone turned face down. Sudden anger when she asks simple questions. Margaret blaming Emily for never having enough. Margaret must know. Emily says it out loud without meaning to. Thomas does not answer directly. Mrs. Ashford believed Margaret Whitmore was aware of more than she admitted. Sophie swears under her breath. Emily stands suddenly. I need air. Thomas pauses the meeting and leads them to a small balcony at the back of the building. It overlooks a courtyard full of wet stone and winter bare plants. Emily grips the railing. Sophie stands beside her. I'm going to kill him. No, Emily whispers. Fine. I'm going to emotionally destroy him and then kill him metaphorically. Emily almost smiles, but tears spill over. How could I not know? Because you trusted your husband. I gave him everything. I know. My wages, my time, my body, my hope. Sophie puts an arm around her. Emily leans into her friend and cries quietly. Not loudly. She has learned to cry quietly. But this time, the tears are different. They are not only sad, they are angry. After a while, she wipes her face. I want to continue. Inside, Thomas Reed waits with tea. Emily does not drink. There's another matter, he says. Emily feels exhausted already. Of course there is. Thomas opens a second folder. Mrs. Ashford's letter mentioned Mr. Oliver Bennett. Emily looks up. Yes. Oliver Bennett's father, James Bennett, worked for your family many years ago. He was a driver and later a private security assistant for Mrs. Ashford. Emily frowns. Oliver never told me that. Thomas nods. He may not know all of it. James Bennett died when Oliver was 14. Before his death, he gave Mrs. Ashford evidence connected to the original fraud against your mother. What evidence? Copies of documents, a ledger, names, payments made to falsify signatures and redirect assets after your grandfather's death. Sophie leans forward. Who did it? Thomas takes a breath. The central figure appears to be a man named Richard Whitmore. Emily goes cold. Whitmore, Daniel's surname. Thomas Reed watches her carefully. Richard Whitmore was Margaret Whitmore's late husband, Daniel's father. The world stops. Emily stares at him. No. Thomas says nothing. No, Emily repeats, because the word is all she has. Sophie's hand finds hers. Thomas continues gently. Richard Whitmore worked as a junior legal clerk for a firm connected to the Ashford family estate 30 years ago. Evidence suggests he helped alter and conceal documents that removed Caroline Carter's claim. He later benefited financially through offshore transfers and property deals. Mrs. Ashford spent years tracing the money. Emily cannot breathe properly. Daniel's father stole from my mother? That is what the evidence suggests. And Margaret? Margaret Whitmore appears in several related financial records after her marriage to Richard. Mrs. Ashford believed she knew the origin of at least some of the funds. Emily's mind races backward. Margaret's hatred, her contempt, her obsession with class, the way she looked at Emily as if Emily were dirt under her shoe. Was it only cruelty, or guilt, or fear? Sophie's voice cuts through the silence. Are you telling us Emily married into the family that stole her inheritance? Thomas Reed's face is grave. That appears to be the case. Emily sits back. Her marriage suddenly looks different, not romantic, not accidental. A terrible thought forms. Did Daniel know? Thomas does not answer quickly enough. Emily's heart drops. Did Daniel know? She asks again. There is no conclusive evidence that Daniel knew before the marriage. Before. The word is a blade. But after? Thomas folds his hands. Mrs. Ashford suspected that Margaret discovered your identity shortly before the wedding. Whether she told Daniel then or later, we cannot prove. Emily remembers Margaret at the wedding. Cold smile. Pearl earrings. Looking Emily up and down as if measuring the price of her bones. She remembers Margaret asking her once, almost casually, "What was your mother's full name?" Emily had answered, "Caroline Carter, Caroline Ashford before she married." Margaret had dropped a spoon. Emily had thought it was nothing. It was not nothing. Sophie whispers, "Oh my God." Emily looks at Thomas. Why did Eleanor not stop the wedding? Pain crosses his face. I asked her the same question. And? She said you were already legally an adult. She had interfered in your mother's life once by failing to fight hard enough. She feared pushing you would drive you closer to Daniel. She chose to watch, gather evidence, and protect the estate legally before approaching you. Emily laughs once, bitterly. How noble. Thomas accepts the judgment. She regretted many things. Emily looks at the folders. Is there more? Yes. Of course. Mrs. Ashford's final instruction is unusual. She requested that you spend 30 days at Ashford House before deciding whether to sell, keep, or transfer any major asset. She believed the house contains answers she could not fully explain in writing. Emily looks at him. What answers? Thomas hesitates. A locked room, private archives, and possibly the original documents James Bennett hid before his death. Oliver's father. Yes. Emily feels Oliver's name again, warm and painful. Does Oliver know? I contacted him yesterday, Thomas says. Emily's heart jumps. You did? Yes. Mrs. Ashford left him a separate letter and a small bequest. Emily's voice is almost silent. What did he say? He said he would come if you asked. The room becomes still. Sophie looks at Emily. Emily looks down at her hands. For years, Oliver was the person she trusted most. Then she chose Daniel. Not because Daniel loved her more, but because Daniel made life look easier. He arrived polished and confident. He promised escape. Oliver offered steadiness, but Daniel offered a dream. Now the dream is rotting around her. Thomas closes the folder. You do not need to decide everything today, but I must advise you of 3 immediate steps. First, do not discuss details of the trust with Daniel or Margaret. Second, do not sign any documents they present. Third, consider leaving the house on Ashfield Street as soon as possible. Emily looks up. Leaving? Yes. Where would I go? Ashford House is available, or a hotel arranged by the estate, or Miss Lane if appropriate. Sophie answers instantly. Mine. Emily shakes her head. I cannot just leave. Sophie turns to her. Yes, you can. My clothes are there. My documents. Everything. We will get them. Daniel will be furious. Let him. Emily's chest tightens. She imagines Daniel's anger, Margaret's accusations, the hallway closing around her again. She imagines herself packing under their eyes, feeling guilty for escaping. Thomas Reed speaks quietly. Mrs. Whitmore, people often become unpredictable when money, shame, and secrets are exposed at the same time. Emily understands what he is saying. She does not want to. After the meeting, Thomas gives her copies of necessary documents, a temporary access letter for Ashford House, and the phone number of the caretaker. He also gives Sophie the number for a private driver, already paid by the estate. Emily almost refuses. Then she remembers 47,000 pounds of gambling debt paid with her hunger. She takes the number. Outside on King Street, Sophie stops walking and faces her. You are not going back alone. I know. I mean it, I know. And you are calling Oliver. Emily looks away. Sophie softens. This is bigger than old feelings. That is what scares me. Sophie touches her arm. Good. Be scared. But do not be alone. Emily takes out her phone. Oliver's contact is still there. She never deleted it. She told herself it was because old friends do not need to be erased. But perhaps some part of her had kept him like an emergency candle in a drawer, unlit but not forgotten. She presses call. It rings once, twice. Then his voice comes. Emily? One word, her name. No surprise, no confusion, as if he has been waiting. She closes her eyes. Oliver. Sophie steps a little away to give her privacy, but remains close enough to catch her if she falls. Emily stands on the wet pavement, people moving around her, buses roaring past, the city rushing as if her world has not just cracked open. Oliver's voice is low. Are you safe? There it is again. Not how are you, not why are you calling. Are you safe? Emily's throat tightens. I do not know anymore. A pause. Where are you? King Street, outside Reed and Lawson. I'm coming. You do not have to. I'm already coming. The call ends. Emily looks at the phone. Sophie raises her eyebrows. Well, he's coming. Good. Emily's hands tremble. What if Daniel sees him? Sophie's expression hardens. Then Daniel can enjoy seeing what a man looks like when he actually shows up. Oliver arrives 20 minutes later in a dark work van with Bennett Construction printed on the side. He steps out wearing a black jacket, work boots, and jeans dusted faintly with plaster. His hair is darker than Emily remembers, or maybe the years have made him look more solid. His face is leaner. His hands are the same. Strong, rough, real. For a moment, neither of them moves. The city noise fades. Emily sees the boy who fixed her bicycle in the rain. The young man who sat outside her door after her father died. The friend who loved her without demanding payment. The face she tried not to remember whenever Daniel made her feel alone. Oliver looks at her as if she is both a miracle and a wound. Emily, he says. No quotation marks are needed for the way he says it. Her name carries everything. Sophie clears her throat. Hello, Oliver. He nods to her. Sophie. Then his eyes return to Emily. Did Reed tell you? Some of it. About my father? Yes. Oliver looks down briefly. I only learned yesterday. Reed gave me the letter. My dad knew more than anyone thought. He tried to protect the evidence, but he died before he could testify. Emily remembers hearing long ago that Oliver's father died in a road accident. What happened to him? Oliver's jaw tightens. Officially, accident. And unofficially, he looks at her. I've spent half my life wondering why the brakes failed on a car he had serviced himself the day before. Emily feels cold again. Sophie mutters something furious under her breath. Oliver steps closer, but not too close. Reed said you may need to leave your house. Emily looks down. I do not know what to do. Yes, you do, Sophie says. You are just afraid to do it. Emily gives her a tired look. Sophie lifts both hands. I'm being helpful. Oliver's voice stays calm. We can go together. You get what you need. If Daniel or Margaret causes trouble, we leave. No arguing. Emily looks at him. You make it sound easy. It is not easy, but it is simple. There is a difference. Those words settle somewhere deep inside her. They take Oliver's van to Ashfield Street. Sophie sits beside Emily in the back, holding her hand. Oliver drives carefully, saying little. He does not fill the silence with useless comfort. Emily is grateful. As they get closer, her stomach twists harder. The house appears at the end of the street, narrow and gray, curtains drawn in the living room window. Daniel's car is outside. Margaret must have called him home. Oliver notices. You do not have to go in. My passport is there, my mother's photos, some clothes. Then we go in, get them, and leave. Emily nods, but she cannot move when the van stops. Sophie squeezes her hand. I'm right behind you. Oliver opens the van door and waits. Emily steps onto the pavement. Before she reaches the front door, it opens. Daniel stands there. His face changes when he sees Oliver. At first confusion, then recognition, then anger. What is he doing here? Emily stops at the gate. I'm here to collect some things. Daniel looks at Sophie, then Oliver. With an audience? Sophie folds her arms. Yes. Margaret appears behind Daniel. Her eyes move to Oliver and sharpen. Oliver Bennett. Oliver looks at her. Mrs. Whitmore. Margaret's face pales just slightly. Emily sees it, so Margaret knows him, or at least knows the name. Daniel steps outside. Emily, come inside. We need to talk. I will come in to pack. This is insane. You go to one meeting and suddenly you bring him here? His voice twists around the word him. Oliver remains still. Emily says, I'm not discussing this on the street. Daniel lowers his voice. Then come inside without them. No. Margaret laughs coldly. Look at you. One whiff of money and you already think you are above your husband. Emily feels the old shame rise, but this time anger rises with it. No, Margaret. One truth. And I finally see how low you kept me. Margaret's eyes flash. How dare you? Emily walks past her into the house. Her legs tremble, but she keeps moving. The house feels different now. Smaller. Meaner, like a stage set built for her humiliation. She goes upstairs. Sophie follows. Oliver stays in the hallway. Daniel follows too until Oliver's voice stops him. Give her space. Daniel turns. This is my house? Oliver looks around at the peeling walls. Is it? Daniel's face reddens. Emily hears it from the stairs but does not turn back. In the bedroom, she takes her old suitcase from under the bed. It is dusty and one wheel is broken. Sophie opens drawers and helps fold clothes quickly. Take warm things, documents, medication, chargers, anything sentimental. Emily moves like someone in a dream. She takes her passport, birth certificate, mother's locket, the biscuit tin of old letters, a photograph of her parents standing outside a seaside cafe in Brighton, and the old note from Eleanor. I'm sorry, child. Grief has a long shadow. Now the sentence feels less distant. It feels like a key. From downstairs, Daniel's voice rises. You have no right to interfere in my marriage. Oliver answers quietly, too low to hear. Then Margaret's voice cuts through. She is using you, you foolish man. She always had that talent, looking helpless, so men would carry her. Emily freezes. Sophie looks at her. Do not listen. But Emily is tired of not listening, tired of swallowing, tired of letting Margaret rewrite her soul. She walks out of the bedroom and down the stairs. Margaret stands in the hallway like a judge. Emily stops 2 steps above her. For 3 years, you have called me useless, poor, common, weak. You have eaten food I bought and slept under a roof I paid for, while your son gambled away money I earned with bleeding hands. You knew who my mother was. You knew what your husband stole. And still you looked at me every day as if I was beneath you. Margaret's face turns white. Daniel looks at his mother. What is she talking about? Emily looks at him. Ask her. Daniel turns fully. Mom? Margaret's lips press together. This is nonsense. Oliver's voice is calm but hard. It is not nonsense. Richard Whitmore's name is in the Ashford documents. Daniel looks between them. Dad? What does Dad have to do with this? Margaret snaps. Nothing. But the word comes too fast. Daniel sees it. For the first time, Emily sees real uncertainty in his face. Maybe he truly did not know everything. Maybe he knew enough and hid from the rest. She does not have the strength to decide. Daniel looks at Emily. Em, listen to me. Whatever happened before we were born, it has nothing to do with us. Emily's laugh is soft and broken. It has everything to do with us. Because I was hungry in this house while you gambled. I was insulted in this house while your mother knew my family had been robbed by yours. I was made to feel grateful for crumbs that came from a life stolen before I was even born. Daniel steps toward her. I did not know about that. Did you know about your debts? His face closes. That is different. No. That is the part you chose. Silence. Margaret suddenly points at Oliver. And you. Do not pretend you are noble. You have been waiting for this. Waiting for her marriage to crack so you can crawl back in. Oliver's expression barely changes, but Emily sees the pain. He does not answer. Emily does. Oliver has done more for me in 20 minutes than Daniel has done in months. Daniel flinches. That was cruel. Emily looks at him with tired eyes. So was leaving me alone with your mother every day. Sophie comes down with the suitcase. We are done. Daniel blocks the hallway. Emily, please, do not leave like this. For the first time all day, his voice sounds real. Not polished, not calculated. Real fear cracks through it. Emily feels it. She does not hate him. That is part of the pain. Love does not vanish neatly when truth arrives. It lingers in corners, wounded and confused. But she also feels something stronger than pity, a small, fragile instinct to survive. Move, Daniel. He stares at her. I am your husband, and I am still a person. The words land between them. Slowly, Daniel steps aside. Margaret grabs his arm. Do not let her walk out with that man. Daniel does not move. Emily picks up the suitcase, but Oliver gently takes it from her without touching her hand. Sophie opens the door. Cold air enters. Emily looks back once. At the stairs she has climbed exhausted after long shifts. At the kitchen, where she learned to eat less. At the living room, where Margaret sat like a queen over Emily's misery. At Daniel, who looks suddenly younger and lost. Then she steps outside. The door closes behind her. No thunder. No dramatic music. Just the click of a cheap lock and the sound of her old life continuing without her. In the van, Emily sits between her suitcase and Sophie. Oliver starts the engine. Where to? He asks. Sophie answers before Emily can. My flat. Emily looks out of the window. No, she says quietly. Both Sophie and Oliver turn. Emily holds Eleanor's letter against her chest. Take me to Ashford House. Oliver watches her in the mirror. Are you sure? Emily looks at the gray sky. No. Then she breathes in. But I am going anyway. The road out of Manchester feels longer than it is. Buildings thin, traffic eases, the city gives way to leafless trees, stone walls, wide roads, and houses set back behind gates. Emily watches everything from the passenger seat now. Sophie had insisted she sit in front because she looked car sick, though Emily suspects Sophie simply wants Oliver and Emily to speak. They do not speak much. Oliver drives. Emily looks at the road. Sophie texts furiously in the back, probably updating Mr. Harris and preparing 3 separate emergency plans. After some time, Oliver says, "I'm sorry." Emily keeps looking ahead. For what? For not coming sooner. She turns to him. "You did not know. I knew you were unhappy. That's not the same." He grips the steering wheel. It felt close enough. Emily's throat tightens. "I chose Daniel." Oliver says nothing. She looks down at her hands. "I hurt you." "Yes," he says quietly. The honesty hurts more than politeness would. "I'm sorry. I know." He does not say it is fine. He does not pretend the past is weightless. That is one of the things about Oliver. He does not decorate pain to make it easier to hold, but then he adds, "I never wanted you punished for it." Emily closes her eyes. Outside, the road curves through green countryside. Rainwater shines in the ditches. Winter trees stand black against a pale sky. Sophie leans forward between the seats. Just to be clear, this is very emotional and beautiful. But if either of you starts confessing lifelong feelings before Emily has eaten lunch, I'm throwing myself out of the van. A surprised laugh escapes Emily. Oliver's mouth twitches. Noted. Sophie sits back. Good. Continue being emotionally repressed until further notice. For the first time since the solicitor arrived, Emily feels something other than shock. A breath. Small, but hers. Ashford House appears behind iron gates at the end of a long private drive lined with old beech trees. The house is made of pale stone, with tall windows, ivy on one side, and chimneys rising against the cloudy sky. It is not a palace, but it has the quiet authority of a place that has never needed to prove itself. Emily stares. This cannot be mine. Oliver stops at the gate. Not yet officially, but yes. Sophie leans close to the window. Emily, this place has more windows than your entire street. A small intercom buzzes before Oliver can press anything. A man's voice comes through. Mrs. Whitmore? Emily hesitates. Yes. This is Mr. Hale, the caretaker. Mr. Reed called ahead. I'm opening the gate now. The iron gates begin to move, slowly, like the beginning of another life. As they drive up, Emily feels not excitement, but grief. Strange grief. She thinks of her mother, Caroline, who should have walked this driveway. She thinks of her father, Peter, who might have felt uncomfortable but proud. She thinks of herself at 17, counting coins under a dim kitchen light, not knowing that somewhere, behind locked gates, an old family story was waiting. The van stops before the front steps. Mr. Hale stands by the door. He is elderly, tall, and thin, wearing a dark coat and flat cap. His eyes are kind but watchful. Mrs. Whitmore, he says. Emily steps out. Please call me Emily. Something in his face softens. Mrs. Ashford said you would say that. Emily's eyes sting. He opens the door. Welcome home. Home. The word nearly breaks her. Inside, Ashford House smells of beeswax, old books, cold stone, and lavender. The entrance hall is wide, with a staircase rising in a graceful curve. Portraits line the walls. A chandelier hangs above, not glittering, just waiting. Emily steps onto the marble floor and feels suddenly dirty in her worn shoes. Sophie whispers, I'm afraid to breathe on anything. Mr. Hale hears and smiles faintly. The house has survived worse than breathing, Miss Lane. Oliver carries Emily's suitcase inside and sets it near the wall. Mr. Hale shows them the main rooms: drawing room, library, dining room, morning room, kitchen, conservatory. Each space is beautiful but shadowed, as if the house has been holding its breath since Eleanor died. In the library, Emily stops. Books climb from floor to ceiling. A fire has been laid, but not lit. On the mantel is a photograph in a silver frame. Emily walks toward it. A young woman stands in a garden, laughing into the sunlight. Her hair is dark brown. Her eyes are Emily's eyes. "Mom," Emily whispers. Beside Caroline is another woman, older by maybe 20 years, elegant and stern-faced, but with one arm around Caroline's shoulders. Eleanor. Emily touches the frame. She has only a few photographs of her mother. Most were lost in damp flats, hurried moves, and the quiet erosion of poverty. But here is Caroline Young, alive, laughing in a garden Emily has never seen. Mr. Hale speaks softly behind her. Mrs. Ashford kept that on her desk until the end. Emily wipes her cheek. Did she talk about my mother? Every day in the last year. The words hit Emily hard. Every day. Not forgotten. Not unloved. Just separated by fear, pride, secrets, and years that cannot be returned. Sophie touches Emily's back. Mr. Hale clears his throat gently. There is a room Mrs. Ashford wanted you to see. Not today, unless you wish. But soon. The locked room? Emily asks. Yes. Oliver looks at Mr. Hale. Where is it? East Wing. Former study. Mrs. Ashford kept it locked. Mr. Reed has the key, but there's also a family key somewhere in the house. She believed Emily might find it. Sophie frowns. That is mysterious in a very inconvenient way. Mr. Hale nods. Mrs. Ashford had a talent for inconvenience. Emily almost smiles. They go upstairs. Mr. Hale opens a bedroom overlooking the back gardens. It has cream walls, a wide bed, blue curtains, and a fireplace. Fresh sheets have been placed on the bed. A vase of white lilies stands by the window. Emily freezes at the doorway. This was your mother's room, Mr. Hale says. Emily cannot move. Caroline's room. Her mother slept here, dreamed here, maybe cried here, maybe packed a suitcase here before leaving for love and poverty and a life that was stolen from her piece by piece. Emily steps inside. The room is beautiful, but not untouched. It has been preserved, not as a museum, but as a memory. On the dressing table is a small wooden box. Mr. Hale notices her looking. Mrs. Ashford left that for you. Emily opens it. Inside lies a gold necklace with a tiny blue stone, a faded ribbon, and a folded note in handwriting she recognizes from old birthday cards. Caroline's handwriting. Emily's hand shakes. She unfolds the note. For my daughter, if she ever finds her way back to the place that should have known her. Emily sits on the bed. The note is short, only one sentence, but it carries 25 years of absence. Sophie turns away, wiping her eyes. Oliver stands in the doorway, looking at the floor, giving Emily privacy even in his presence. Emily holds the necklace and cries, not quietly this time. She cries for the mother she lost, the girl she was, the life that was stolen, the years spent apologizing for existing. She cries until her chest hurts. No one tells her to stop. No one says she is too sensitive. No one complains about milk. When evening comes, Mr. Hale prepares simple food in the kitchen. Soup, bread, cheese, tea. Emily eats at the long kitchen table with Sophie and Oliver. She cannot remember the last time food tasted like something other than survival. Sophie keeps trying to make jokes, but even she grows quiet. Oliver receives a call from his uncle and steps outside. Emily watches him through the window. He stands in the courtyard, one hand in his pocket, shoulders slightly hunched against the cold. He looks older than the boy she knew. Life has marked him too. Sophie follows her gaze. Careful, she says gently. Emily looks down. I know. Do you? I'm still married. Yes. And I am not ready for anything. Also, yes. Emily looks at her friend. Then why say careful? Because grief and safety can feel like love when you have been starving. Emily absorbs that. Sophie is right. Oliver feels safe, but safety is not a decision. Not yet. I do not want to use him, Emily says. Then do not. Be honest. Keep boundaries. Let him help because he chooses to, not because you promise him anything. Emily nods. Outside, Oliver ends the call and looks toward the window. For a moment, their eyes meet through the glass. He does not smile. Neither does she. But something passes between them. Recognition. Pain. A door not opened, but not locked either. Later, Sophie insists on staying the night. Mr. Hale prepares a guest room. Oliver says he should leave, but Sophie blocks him with a look. You are not driving away while Daniel knows Emily is here, and Margaret is possibly part dragon. There are at least 15 empty rooms. Pick one. Oliver looks at Emily. Only if you are comfortable. Emily appreciates that he asks her, not Sophie. You can stay. He nods. Thank you. That night, Emily lies in her mother's room wearing borrowed pajamas from an unopened drawer. The sheets smell faintly of lavender. The house creaks softly around her. Somewhere outside, wind moves through old trees. Her phone lights up. Daniel. She does not answer. It lights again. Then messages begin. Emily, please pick up. We need to talk. Mom is upset. You cannot just leave your marriage. I did not know about Dad. I made mistakes, but I love you. Please come home. Home. Emily looks around Caroline's room. For the first time, Daniel's house on Ashfield Street does not feel like home. Maybe it never did. Another message arrives. If you are with Oliver, you are making a mistake. Emily turns the phone face down. She closes her eyes. But sleep does not come easily. Near midnight, she hears something. A sound from downstairs. Not the normal creak of an old house. A soft thud. Then another. Emily sits up. For a moment, she thinks it is the wind. Then she hears a muffled crash, quickly silenced. Her heart begins to race. She gets out of bed and opens the door. The hallway is dark, except for a thin line of moonlight from a tall window. She listens. Footsteps. Not upstairs. Below. She moves toward Sophie's room, but another door opens first. Oliver appears in the hallway, fully dressed, eyes alert. You heard it too, he says quietly. Emily nods. He gestures for her to stay back. Get Sophie. Lock the door. But Emily does not move fast enough. From downstairs comes Mr. Hale's voice, sharp with fear. Who are you? You cannot be in here. Then a man's voice. Where is it? Emily freezes. Oliver's face changes. He moves quickly down the hall toward the stairs. Emily runs to wake Sophie. Within seconds, Sophie is up, grabbing her phone. Call the police, Emily whispers. Sophie does. Emily cannot stay in the room. She follows the corridor, keeping close to the wall. From the top of the staircase, she sees shadows moving in the entrance hall. Oliver is halfway down, silent and controlled. Mr. Hale stands near the library door, pale but upright. Two men in dark clothing face him. One holds a crowbar. The other is near the hallway table, pulling open drawers. The man with the crowbar steps closer to Mr. Hale. The key. Old woman had a key. Mr. Hale lifts his chin. I do not know what you mean. The man raises the crowbar. Oliver reaches the bottom step. Leave him. Both men turn. The next seconds happen too quickly. One man lunges. Oliver dodges and drives him into the wall. The other swings the crowbar. Mr. Hale stumbles back. Emily gasps from the stairs, and the sound makes the man look up. He sees her. There she is, he says. Oliver turns sharply. Emily? Run. The man starts toward the stairs. Emily cannot move. Fear roots her to the spot. Then Sophie appears behind her, grabs her arm, and pulls. Move. They run down the upper hallway. Behind them, footsteps pound. Oliver shouts. Something crashes. Emily and Sophie duck into Caroline's room and lock the door. Sophie pushes a chair under the handle with shaking hands. Police are coming, Sophie says breathlessly. They said 8 minutes. 8 minutes feels like a lifetime. The hallway outside goes silent. Too silent. Emily backs away from the door. Then her phone lights up on the bed. Unknown number. She stares at it. It rings and rings. Sophie whispers, "Do not answer." Emily answers. A voice comes through, low and distorted, perhaps using a device, perhaps just speaking through cloth. Mrs. Carter should have stayed buried. Emily cannot breathe. The voice continues. Leave Ashford House, forget the room, or the next accident will not miss you. The call ends. Emily stands frozen, phone in hand. Sophie's face is white. What did they say? Emily looks toward the locked door. Before she can answer, there's a heavy bang against it. The chair jumps. Sophie screams. Another bang. The old wood cracks. Emily grabs the necklace from the dressing table without knowing why. The blue stone is cold in her palm. A third bang hits the door. Then suddenly, from the hallway, Oliver's voice roars. Get away from that door. There's a struggle outside. A shout, running footsteps, a crash against the wall. Then sirens rise in the distance, growing louder. The footsteps retreat. By the time police lights flash across the windows, the men are gone. Oliver opens the bedroom door from the outside, breathing hard, blood at the corner of his mouth. Emily runs to him before she can stop herself. Are you hurt? He shakes his head. Not badly. Mr. Hale? Safe. Shaken. Sophie lowers the phone, still connected to emergency services. Emily looks at Oliver's face, at the blood, at the anger in his eyes that is not for himself, but for her. The warning call echoes in her mind. Mrs. Carter should have stayed buried, not Mrs. Whitmore. Mrs. Carter. Someone knows exactly who she is. Someone is afraid of what Eleanor left behind. And somewhere inside Ashford House, behind a locked door, or inside a hidden drawer, there is something powerful enough to make men break in at midnight. Emily looks down at the blue stone necklace in her hand. For the first time, she notices something strange. The stone is not simply decorative. It has a tiny seam around its edge. A locket. She presses it gently. It opens. Inside, folded so tightly it is almost impossible to see, is a tiny strip of paper. Emily pulls it out with trembling fingers and unfolds it. There are only 6 words written in her mother's handwriting. The key is beneath the roses. The key is beneath the roses. Emily reads the words again and again, her fingers trembling around the tiny strip of paper. It feels as if her mother is reaching through the years, pulling her toward a truth that has waited too long. Sophie stands beside her, pale and frightened. Oliver is in the doorway, blood drying at the corner of his mouth after fighting off the intruders. Downstairs, police officers move through Ashford House, checking broken locks, muddy footprints, and the side gate where the men escaped. But Emily hears only one sentence. The key is beneath the roses. Oliver reads the note and looks toward the window. Roses, he says quietly. Sophie swallows. There are probably hundreds of roses here. Emily looks into the dark garden. Her mother's old room overlooks the rose garden. Somewhere beneath those sleeping winter bushes, Caroline has hidden something for her. We have to look, Emily says. Not tonight, Oliver answers. Someone broke into the house. They threatened you. They may still be nearby. Emily wants to argue, but she knows he's right. She folds the note carefully and hides it back inside the blue stone locket. Sergeant Helen Brooks questions Emily in the morning room. Emily tells her everything. The solicitor, the inheritance, Eleanor's letter, the break-in, and the phone call. Mrs. Carter should have stayed buried. Sergeant Brooks writes it down. They used your mother's married name, she says. Yes. Carter. Do you think this is connected to the inheritance? I do not know what else it could be. Emily gives the names Daniel Whitmore, Margaret Whitmore, and Richard Whitmore. Saying Daniel's name to the police feels like crossing a line she can never uncross. When the police leave, the house feels empty and wounded. Mr. Hale apologizes, saying Mrs. Ashford trusted him to protect the house. Emily tells him he did protect it. Mr. Hale admits Eleanor had feared this day. In her last months, she spent long nights in the study, burning some papers and locking away others. Sometimes she spoke to Caroline's photograph. Emily asks if Eleanor ever mentioned the roses. Once, Mr. Hale says. She said Caroline trusted beauty more than locks. The words settle over Emily like another clue. Oliver repairs the side door temporarily and calls his uncle to install cameras and stronger locks. Emily wants to refuse the help, but Sophie says she is new to being rich and hunted, so she should let people help. Emily calls Thomas Reed. When she tells him about the break-in and the note, he becomes silent. "Mrs. Whitmore," he says at last, "if there is a key beneath the roses, it may not simply open a door. It may unlock evidence some people have spent decades trying to erase." "Who are those people?" Emily asks. "That is what we need to discover before they discover you." At 8, Thomas arrives with Grace Pembroke, Eleanor's private archivist. Grace is sharp-eyed, silver-haired, and calm in a way that makes even Sophie quiet. When Grace reads the note, she immediately says, "The West Garden." "How do you know?" Emily asks. "Because Caroline planted the white roses there before she left Ashford House. Eleanor never allowed anyone to remove them. They go outside in the cold morning. The rose garden sleeps under winter damp, its bare branches twisted around old iron frames. Grace leads them to the central bed, where an old marker is half buried in the soil. C.A. Caroline Ashford. Emily kneels. Oliver offers to dig, but she shakes her head. This is something she has to do herself. With gloved hands, she clears the soil around the oldest rose bush. At first there's only mud and roots. Then her fingers touch metal. Everyone stills. Thomas photographs everything before Emily lifts out a small green metal box wrapped in old oilcloth. Inside is a brass key wrapped in blue silk and another folded note in Caroline's handwriting. If Emily finds this, then the truth has waited longer than I hoped. This key opens my father's private cabinet in the east study. Eleanor knows the room, but not the hiding place. I cannot trust the solicitors. I cannot trust Richard Whitmore. I cannot trust the men smiling at our table. If I disappear, if Peter is threatened, if my child grows up without what belongs to her, let this key speak for me. Emily, my darling, forgive me. I tried to protect you before I even knew your face. Emily covers her mouth. My child. Caroline wrote this before Emily was born. Thomas says Richard Whitmore's name directly. Oliver goes still. Daniel's father is no longer only part of an old story. He is part of the crime. They return to the house and go to the east wing. The locked study waits behind a heavy oak door. Thomas opens it with Eleanor's official key. Dust and stale air breathe out. Inside, the room is crowded with shelves, papers, cabinets, and a large desk near the window. Grace walks to the bookshelves and presses a carved rose in the wooden trim. A hidden section clicks open. Sophie almost drops her phone. This house has secret panels? Old money often has old paranoia, Grace says. Behind the panel is a small locked cabinet. Emily uses Caroline's brass key. Her hand shakes, but the key turns. Inside are files, ledgers, photographs, cassette tapes, letters tied with black ribbon, a leather diary, and an envelope marked for Emily Carter only. Emily opens the envelope first. It is from Eleanor. Emily, if you have opened this cabinet, then you have found what your mother died trying to protect. I failed Caroline. I loved her, but I underestimated the men around us. Your grandfather trusted Richard Whitmore because Richard looked obedient. He was not. He helped steal your mother's claim, but he was not alone. The others are named in the ledgers. One became a judge. One became a banker. One became a politician. One became a silent partner in companies that still exist. Richard died before I could bring him to court, but his widow knows. Margaret knows enough to fear you. Daniel may know less, but he has benefited more than he understands. Do not let them turn your kindness into surrender. Do not trust love that arrives after money. Do not trust guilt that speaks only when caught. And do not ignore Oliver Bennett. His father paid with his life because he chose truth over safety. The choice of your life must be yours. Not Daniel's, Not Oliver's, not mine. Yours. Emily folds the letter. Something inside her changes too fast for tears. She hands it to Thomas. I want every name found. Grace studies the ledgers. They contain payment records, dates, initials, account numbers. Eleanor was right. Thomas takes out old photographs. In one, Richard Whitmore stands outside Ashford House with Margaret beside him. Young Margaret wears pearl earrings and a perfect smile. Beside her stands Caroline, pregnant and uncomfortable. Emily's breath catches. Margaret knew my mother. Another photograph shows a dinner table. Richard, Margaret, Caroline, Eleanor, and several respectable-looking men sit together. Monsters at a table can still look like guests. Oliver picks up another photo and stiffens. A man stands half hidden near the edge, wearing a driver's uniform. James Bennett, Oliver's father. Grace says James was loyal to Caroline and Eleanor trusted him more than her own lawyers. Oliver's face hardens with grief. For years he believed his father died in an accident. Now even that grief has roots in someone else's crime. Then Emily opens Caroline's diary. The first line reads, I am writing because I'm frightened, and frightened women are too easily called dramatic if they speak aloud. Emily sits at the desk and reads. Caroline writes about loving Peter Carter, about her father's anger, about Richard Whitmore hovering around legal papers, about Margaret asking too many questions, about missing documents, strange signatures, and fear growing inside the house. One line stops Emily cold. Margaret asks too many questions about my pregnancy. She says daughters are expensive because they carry blood away from the house. I do not like how she looks at me. Emily looks up. Margaret knew before I was born. Thomas nods grimly. Emily reads more. Caroline writes that something is wrong after the tea. Her heart races. Her hands shake. Doctors dismiss her. Peter begs her to leave. James says he has copied documents and that Richard is moving money through accounts tied to M.W. Margaret Whitmore. Emily closes the diary. She cannot read more. Then Thomas's phone rings. His face changes as he listens. Daniel has reported Emily missing. He claims she is emotionally unstable, influenced by Oliver, and possibly being manipulated for the inheritance. He also says she took marital property and may be confused. Emily's face burns. Thomas explains that Daniel is creating a record to question her judgment. Margaret's influence is obvious. Emily looks at her phone. There are dozens of missed calls and messages from Daniel and Margaret. Daniel writes that she is being cruel, that Oliver wants to ruin them, that she is his wife, and that she must come home before things get worse. Margaret writes, ungrateful girls often regret humiliating the families who took them in. Emily shows Thomas. He photographs everything. When Daniel calls again, Emily answers. Where are you? He asks. At Ashford House. Are you alone? No. Of course not. Is Oliver there? This is not about Oliver. It is completely about Oliver, Daniel snaps. No, Daniel. This is about your lies. You disappeared overnight with another man, and I am the liar? You reported me missing. Because you are not acting like yourself. Maybe I am acting like myself for the first time. Daniel tells her his mother is devastated. Emily says Margaret is not devastated. She is afraid. Afraid of what? Of the truth about Richard, about my mother, about the Ashford estate. Daniel becomes quieter. He admits Margaret told him, before the wedding, that there was old bad blood between their families. She said Caroline had made accusations against Richard, that Eleanor was unstable, and that Emily might leave if she found out. Emily feels the room turn cold. Before the wedding? Daniel says he was scared. He says he loved her and did not want old history between them. My mother's inheritance was stolen, Emily says. Your father helped destroy her life, and you married me without telling me. Daniel says he is sorry. Emily remembers Eleanor's warning. Do not trust guilt that speaks only when caught. She tells Daniel she needs space, orders him not to report her missing again, not to come to Ashford House,
and to tell Margaret she is keeping every message. Then she ends the call. Emily feels hollow, not proud. Oliver tells her she did the right thing. "Why does the right thing feel so cruel?" she asks. "Because you have been trained to think your pain is kindness." The words stay with her. By afternoon, security is installed around Ashford House. Thomas secures the documents. Grace reveals another safe hidden behind a study panel. Sophie says the house is showing off. Grace says the house has better memory than most people. That evening, Emily stands at the library window. The winter garden glows in the fading light. Oliver joins her, careful not to stand too close. She asks if his father knew her mother. Oliver says Grace believes James respected Caroline and helped her. Emily says she wishes she knew what Caroline sounded like as an adult. Oliver remembers Caroline brushing Emily's long hair when Emily was little. He says he remembers too much. The sentence opens something between them. Emily tells Oliver she is grateful he is here, but she cannot step into another life just because he feels safe. She is still married. She does not want to use him. Oliver says he knows. He has loved her a long time, but he is not here to collect a debt. "You do not owe me your heart because I showed up," he says. Emily's eyes fill. "Daniel always made love feel like something I had to repay." Oliver does not answer against Daniel. He only tells her to find out who she is without someone needing something from her. Later, Grace reads Caroline's diary aloud in the library. The diary shows Caroline as funny, stubborn, loving, frightened, and brave. She loves Peter fiercely. She distrusts Richard. She dislikes Margaret's false sweetness. She writes about baby Emily with tenderness. Then the entries darken. Margaret appears again years later, after Caroline and Peter moved to Manchester. Caroline writes that Margaret came to the bakery and spoke strangely about Daniel, saying he was a fine boy Emily might like when she grew older. Emily's stomach twists. "Margaret watched me as a child." The thought makes her sick. Daniel's arrival in her life suddenly looks less like romance and more like a plan. Emily leaves the room and goes to the rose garden. She kneels beside Caroline's rose bush and whispers to her mother, You tried before I even knew." Oliver follows her but keeps a respectful distance. Emily asks if Daniel knew from the beginning. Oliver says he does not know, but some people choose not to know because knowing would cost them something. Emily realizes Daniel chose comfort, and she chose what looked like love when she was lonely. Oliver tells her that is not a crime. By morning, Daniel comes to the gate without calling. He stands at the camera holding white roses. Emily never told him she liked white roses, and before yesterday, she did not even know what they meant. She refuses to open the gate. Daniel pleads, then grows angry. He says she is making a mistake, that the house and money are changing her. Emily says they are revealing him. When he sees Oliver behind her, he calls him a loyal dog. Emily warns him she will call the police. Daniel's face turns cold. "You think this estate is yours because an old woman wrote your name on paper. But paper burns, Emily." The kitchen falls silent. Daniel realizes he has gone too far. Emily orders him to leave. He throws the white roses at the gate and drives away. Thomas arrives soon after with worse news. One of the men in Caroline's evidence is still alive. Sir Adrian Vale, a former judge. His initials appear in the ledgers beside payments linked to the Ashford fraud. Grace goes pale. Adrian visited Eleanor 2 weeks before she died and warned her against reopening graves. Emily asks if Eleanor's death was natural. Thomas says the certificate lists heart failure, but after the break-in, he requested a review. Every truth opens another wound. That evening, Emily receives a message from Margaret. "Emily, whatever you have been told, remember that blood money destroys those who touch it." Eleanor was bitter. Caroline was unstable. "Your mother ruined herself chasing fantasies. Do not repeat her mistake." Caroline was unstable. The same weapon used across generations. Call a woman unstable, and her truth becomes noise. Grace tells Emily, Margaret was not born rich, but wanted wealth as proof of worth. Richard gave her access to rooms she had only dreamed of entering. Caroline tried to be kind to her, but Margaret hated kindness because it made her feel inferior. Did Margaret love Richard? Emily asks. Grace answers, Margaret loved what Richard could take. That night, Emily dreams of the cracked bathroom mirror at Ashfield Street. She sees Caroline, Eleanor, and herself as a child. All three whisper without sound, "Wake up." At dawn, Emily understands the inheritance is not only money, it is pain, truth, and courage buried beneath roses. Then Mr. Harris from the bakery calls. Margaret came to his shop, asking if Emily had seemed unreliable, confused, or dishonest. Mr. Harris told Margaret to leave and defended Emily as the most honest worker he ever had. Emily realizes Margaret and Daniel are trying to write a story about her before she can tell the truth. She calls Thomas. Together they prepare a careful statement saying Emily is safe, taking legal advice, denying claims that she is unstable or dishonest, and asking for privacy. It feels small, but to Emily, it feels like standing upright. Daniel messages, "So now you are turning people against me." Emily does not reply. Later, Grace finds a diary entry written 2 weeks before Caroline's death. "If I die, do not believe the first doctor. I'm being given something. I do not know by whom. Peter thinks I'm afraid because of the documents, but it is not only fear. My heart races after tea. My hands shake. Margaret came again today. She asked if Emily likes sweet milk. I told her to stay away from my daughter. Caroline believed she was being poisoned. The word changes the room. Emily thinks of Margaret's tea, Margaret's false kindness, Margaret's hatred. If Margaret harmed Caroline, then Emily lived for 3 years under the roof of the woman who may have killed her mother. Thomas returns with old medical records. Caroline collapsed several times before her death. Doctors called it anxiety. One suggested more testing, but Caroline died before the appointment. Peter demanded an investigation, then died 6 months later in a scaffolding accident. Oliver reads the report and says, "Safety rails do not simply fail if installed properly. Caroline, Peter, James Bennett, Eleanor." Accidents begin to look like a language. At 2 a.m, Emily stands in the dining room beneath Henry Ashford's portrait and wonders how many respectable families hide violence behind polished frames. Oliver finds her there. Emily asks if their lives were decided before they were born. Oliver says their parents resisted. James hid evidence, Caroline hid the key, Eleanor built the trust. "And us?" Emily asks. "We decide what to do with what they left," Oliver says. By morning, Emily knows she will not sell Ashford House, will not give Daniel money, will not let Margaret write the story, and will not bury Caroline again. After breakfast, Thomas calls. Sir Adrian Vale has requested a meeting to discuss historical misunderstandings before things become public. Emily agrees to meet him at Ashford House with legal counsel, recording, and security. Sir Adrian arrives in a black car. He is old, elegant, and cold. He calls Emily Caroline's daughter and says she has Caroline's eyes. Emily answers that he should remember them clearly when he lies. Sir Adrian claims Eleanor became obsessed with old grievances and imagined conspiracies. Emily asks if he has come to call another Ashford woman unstable. He warns her that public accusations can damage many lives, including hers. Emily asks if that is a threat. Thomas says threats often sound like wisdom in legal language. When Emily asks about Caroline's belief that she was poisoned, Sir Adrian dismisses it as anxiety. When she asks about payments and altered documents, he calls the evidence scribblings of frightened women. Emily opens Caroline's diary and tells him those frightened women left records, names, dates, payments, and witnesses. Sir Adrian rises and warns her that she will learn what her mother learned. Oliver steps forward. Then, "Do not make it necessary," he says quietly. Sir Adrian leaves, but not before saying, "Eleanor waited until death because she knew living people pay the price for truth." Emily answers, "So do dead ones." That evening, Daniel messages that Emily has no idea what she is doing. Emily replies, "Then tell me what you know." He refuses by text, so Thomas arranges a monitored meeting at Reed and Lawson. Margaret is not invited. Daniel arrives exhausted. Emily faces him with Sophie beside her and Oliver waiting outside. Daniel admits Margaret told him before the wedding about Caroline's accusations against Richard. He claims he loved Emily and did not want history between them. But he also admits that after he told Margaret about Emily Carter, Margaret became interested and encouraged the relationship. Emily asks if Margaret wanted control over the Ashford claim. Daniel whispers, "Maybe." That tiny word destroys the last illusion. Emily tells Daniel she is filing for legal separation. He begs for another chance, but Emily says she gave him 3 years. Thomas presents legal notice forbidding unauthorized visits and false claims about her mental state. Daniel signs with shaking hands. Before she leaves, Daniel asks if she ever loved him. "Yes," Emily says. "That is why it took me so long to leave." Outside, Manchester is wet again. Emily no longer feels owned by the life she lived there. On the drive back, Daniel sends, "I never deserved you." Emily does not reply. Then Margaret sends, "You think you have won." But Caroline thought that too. Emily's blood turns cold. Margaret is not hiding anymore. She remembers. That night, Emily finds a photograph tucked into Caroline's diary. It shows Emily as a little girl in a red coat outside school. On the back, Caroline wrote, "Margaret is watching her again." Someone watched Emily as a child. Someone planned long before Emily understood. The story is no longer simply about a poor girl, a weak husband, and a cruel mother-in-law. It is inheritance, theft, silence, class, greed, fear, and women buried beneath the word unstable. Emily stands and says she wants Margaret questioned. Oliver and Sophie object, but Emily says she does not mean alone or now. She needs to hear Margaret say what she knows. "Why?" Grace asks. "Because my mother never got to ask her." The room goes quiet. Grace nods. Then we prepare properly. Outside, wind moves through the white roses. Inside, Emily Carter understands that the inheritance has not given her peace. It has given her a battlefield, and for the first time in her life, she is not standing on it with lowered eyes. The next morning, Emily wakes up at Ashford House. Initially disoriented, memories of the inheritance, the break-in, the key beneath the roses, Daniel's confession, and Margaret's message flood back, no longer causing fear, but bringing clarity and strength. Standing before the mirror, she fully accepts herself as Emily Carter. Downstairs, she announces to Sophie, Grace, Oliver, and Mr. Hale her resolve to confront Margaret. Despite Sophie and Oliver's warnings, Emily insists it is her decision alone. She needs to face Margaret and demand she speak her mother Caroline's name with respect. Thomas Reed arranges a recorded meeting at his office, with Sergeant Brooks observing. On the day of the meeting, Emily wears Eleanor's dark wool coat. Margaret enters arrogantly but briefly falters upon seeing the coat. Throughout the conversation, Margaret tries to demean Caroline, claiming she chose poverty, but Emily stands her ground, questioning Margaret about a childhood photograph and why she was watched. When pressed about Richard's theft and Caroline being poisoned, Margaret denies it, dismissing Caroline as weak, but inadvertently reveals that Richard was just a clerk, and that powerful entities like judges, banks, and Sir Adrian Vale are involved. Most painfully, Margaret admits she pushed Daniel to marry Emily because she had useful blood. Though shaken, Emily turns the tables, declaring she's no longer the trembling girl from the kitchen. Defeated, Margaret storms out. Afterward, Daniel calls to defend his mother, but Emily rejects his apologies. Thomas and Grace note that Margaret's recorded statements provide significant evidence of conspiracy. Soon after, Emily discovers letters revealing that Margaret had planned her and Daniel's relationship since childhood, as a future harvest, with Oliver providing quiet comfort as she processes this betrayal. Days later, a corruption inquiry involving Sir Adrian Vale is reopened, thrusting Emily and Daniel into the public eye. In response, Emily releases a video statement, identifying herself as Caroline Carter's daughter, cooperating with authorities, and declaring she is not unstable. This prompts a message from Patricia Moore, a retired nurse who cared for Caroline. Patricia reveals that Caroline was terrified of Margaret, warned Emily never to be near her, and hid a confidential envelope in the hospital locker 18. Following this breakthrough, Daniel gives a sworn statement against his mother, revealing she kept a secret box of documents as insurance. The police raid Margaret's house, but she has already fled, leaving behind an empty cabinet and a single white rose wrapped in black ribbon. That night, Margaret sneaks into the Ashford house garden and leaves a page from Caroline's diary under a rose bush. The note reads, "If Margaret comes near Emily again, I will tell everyone what I saw at Vale's house. Not the papers, not the money, the girl." Grace realizes the girl refers to Lily Marsh, a 17-year-old maid who mysteriously disappeared decades ago. Realizing the true inheritance means taking responsibility for these dark secrets, Emily decides to investigate Lily's disappearance. With Grace revealing that Eleanor hid staff records beneath the floorboards, Emily feels a renewed sense of purpose and strength rising beneath her grief. Purpose follows Emily like a quiet bell, not making her fearless, but standing beside her terror. Grace leads Emily, Sophie, Thomas, Oliver, and Mr. Hale into a cold, dusty passage behind the old servants' staircase. Sophie mutters about murder documentaries as they reach a linen room. Grace, an archivist who claims to be what dragons become when they prefer paper to gold, points to floorboards. Beneath them, they find a metal case containing staff records. Emily is struck by how truth hides in ordinary places. Grace uses a secret key to open the case, revealing files of servants, including Lily Marsh, a 17-year-old who disappeared after being framed for theft. A note in Eleanor Ashford's handwriting reveals Lily's dismissal was demanded by Sir Adrian Vale. They find a letter from Lily to Mrs. Ashford, pleading her innocence and explaining she was being blackmailed by Vale to protect her younger brother. Emily realizes the phrase, "girls like me," defines her own entrapment. Grace produces another envelope marked, "For Caroline, if she forgives me." Emily opens it to find Eleanor admitting she failed to defend Lily, knowing Vale struck her and others framed her. This revelation confirms why Caroline threatened Margaret. It wasn't about money, but about the truth of what happened to Lily. They find Lily's brother, Samuel, now an elderly man in Blackpool. He reveals a postcard from Lily and a newspaper clipping about an unidentified injured girl, which he feared was her. He also shares an anonymous note sent 20 years later containing money and the words, "The sea keeps secrets better than houses." Emily realizes Lily likely lived near the sea. They track a woman named Lily March to a guest house in Brighton, where a witness confirms she was a pretty, sad-eyed thing who fled when a well-dressed woman with pearls, Margaret, came looking for her. They find that Lily survived, married, and had a son named David, but passed away in 2004. Emily meets David in Cornwall. He gives her a final letter from Lily to Caroline, offering forgiveness. The letter tells Emily not to let them make her grateful for survival, but to ask for more. Through David, they learn of a red room in Sir Adrian Vale's house, where he kept trophies from girls he harmed. Margaret, they realize, didn't just know crimes. She collected leverage. A chilling call from Margaret mocks Emily and reveals that Oliver's father, James Bennet, didn't die instantly as he was told. Oliver is shattered, but he and Emily find a new, silent connection in their shared grief. Testing on tea leaves found in a locker confirms Eleanor's suspicion. Caroline was poisoned with digitalis. This evidence, along with a note from James Bennet and other documents, fuels the reopening of multiple cases. Daniel, coerced by Margaret, admits to delivering a poisoned letter to Eleanor. Emily establishes the Caroline Carter Foundation to help other women in similar situations. They discover a blue nursery at Ashford House containing a silver bracelet belonging to Rose, a child of Henry Ashford, and a servant named Mary Atwood, who was also removed by the Vale family's network. Emily's inheritance becomes a map of harm, but she decides to use it as a tool for justice. Margaret tries to lure Emily to Redmere Hall, but Emily goes with police, discovering a lockbox with evidence that links Richard Whitmore, Adrian Vale, and Margaret to a decades-long history of abuse. Margaret is eventually caught at a ferry port. Emily meets Anne Vale, Adrian's daughter, who provides more evidence. Emily learns Rose Atwood survived and was raised in Ireland. She tracks down Rose's daughter, Maeve, and finds that Rose was loved. Emily finally feels the weight of her inheritance shift. She is not just an heiress, she is a witness. As the legal cases grind on, Emily stands in her rose garden. She hasn't found absolute peace, but she has found a long repair. She is Emily Carter, no longer buried, building a future out of the truth. She accepts that love does not become good just because it is real, and she chooses to be free. The house stands, not innocent, but awake. The morning at Ashford House begins with a renewed sense of life, as Emily shares a light-hearted breakfast with Sophie, Grace, Mr. Hale, Oliver, and lawyer Thomas Reed, though the shadow of Margaret's upcoming preliminary hearing looms over them. The fragile peace is shattered when the post arrives, bringing a letter from Margaret containing a photograph of baby Emily, with her parents, Caroline and Peter, accompanied by a cruel note reading that her mother begged beautifully. Though initially devastated, Emily realizes the photograph is proof that she was truly loved before Margaret's lies and abuse took over her life. Soon after, Daniel calls to reveal that he too received a manipulative package from Margaret and mentions a clue Eleanor once gave him about dead women's drawers, prompting Grace to search Eleanor's old room where she discovers a hidden receipt for a storage unit rented by Margaret. The police, led by Sergeant Brooks, raid the unit and find a treasure trove of blackmail material, including cassette tapes containing recordings of Margaret's victims. One tape reveals a horrifying conversation where a younger Margaret taunts a weakened, poisoned Caroline, who desperately begs for Emily's safety, proving Margaret's premeditated cruelty and manipulation. Armed with this undeniable evidence, Emily demands a formal, recorded confrontation with Margaret in police custody, where she bravely refuses to be intimidated, declaring that she is armed with the truth of her mother, Eleanor, Lily, and Rose, leaving Margaret powerless. Moving forward with her life, Emily formally establishes the Caroline Carter Foundation, receiving countless letters from women who have suffered similar systemic abuses, and she commits to answering every single one, alongside Sophie and Grace. As Ashford House undergoes extensive renovations overseen by Oliver, trust and affection grow between him and Emily, culminating in a tender moment in the greenhouse where Emily confesses her love for him, but firmly states she needs time to heal and belong to herself first, a boundary Oliver respects with absolute patience. The legal battle against Margaret progresses favorably in court, prompting a massive public outpouring of support and wildflowers from strangers, as well as an anonymous, repentant donation from Daniel. A private memorial is finally held in the blooming white rose garden for Caroline, Lily, Rose, and Eleanor, attended by allies like Maeve and David, where Emily honors her mother's courage and dedicates plaques to the victims, leaving one blank for those yet to be named. The morning after the memorial, Thomas arrives with a final, posthumous letter from Eleanor that advises Emily to prioritize her own freedom before love and suggests turning Ashford House into a sanctuary rather than a monument to the family's dark past. Empowered by these words and supported by her loyal friends, Emily makes her first true decision, born of absolute freedom, declaring that the estate will be transformed into the Caroline Carter House for Women's Truth and Recovery, ensuring that the home which once harbored dark secrets will forever serve as a safe haven where women are believed and protected. 3 months later, Ashford House is transformed into the Caroline Carter House for Women's Truth and Recovery. Emily Carter watches women arrive, operating the center quietly without spectacle, supported by Sophie, Mr. Hale, and Grace. Oliver works nearby, his love for Emily growing steadily and patiently. Daniel Whitmore sends a letter detailing his gambling treatment, accepting responsibility for his silence and admitting his weakness. Emily files his letter under voluntary testimony. He is no longer an enemy, but a witness, and that is enough. Margaret Whitmore's trial begins in autumn. Sir Adrian Vale dies before standing trial, but the evidence speaks for him through tapes, letters, and witnesses like Lily's son, Maeve, Patricia, and Daniel. Emily testifies calmly, detailing the poverty Margaret used as a weapon, the inheritance, and the hidden tapes. When Caroline's recording plays in court, begging for her life, everyone finally hears Margaret's cold, calculated reply. There it is. You beg beautifully. During the weeks-long trial, Margaret's defense tries to break every witness, but the pattern of poison, blackmail, and deceit is undeniable. Margaret never confesses. On the final day, a steadier Daniel testifies against his mother, admitting she raised him to obey fear. When Margaret calls him ungrateful, Daniel replies he was grateful for the wrong things, finally breaking her hold over him. Outside the court, they share a silent nod, their final goodbye. The verdict is guilty on multiple counts, including conspiracy, tampering, and administering poison to Caroline and Eleanor. Before her long sentencing, Margaret shows no remorse, claiming she simply used the tools of cruel men to survive. She tells Emily she would have done the same if she had been hungry enough. Emily stands and delivers a single clear word: no. Led away, Margaret finally looks small, leaving Emily with no joy, only a profound sense of release. 1 year later, Ashford House thrives with light and life. Daniel lives elsewhere, exchanging peaceful yearly letters with Emily. In a garden blooming with diverse roses, Emily and Oliver declare their freedom and choose each other. They marry in a quiet ceremony surrounded by friends. Years later, they welcome a daughter, Caroline Lily Rose Bennett. Looking at her sleeping child, Emily realizes she is born into truth, not silence. Emily finally understands that true inheritance is not money or a name, but the courage to take what was broken and let love enter without fear. The second week of the trial begins amidst heavy rain and a media frenzy that Emily calmly ignores. Inside the courtroom, Thomas Reed organizes files with his usual precision, while Grace, Sophie, and Oliver sit in the gallery behind Emily to offer steady support. Margaret Whitmore enters silently under escort. The prosecutor then calls a surprise confidential witness to the stand. An elderly woman named Judith Collins enters, whom Grace recognizes. Judith testifies that 42 years ago, she was a junior nurse at the hospital during Caroline Carter's final days. She reveals that Caroline constantly claimed she was being poisoned, but doctors dismissed it as anxiety. Judith vividly remembers Margaret visiting Caroline with flowers and tea, always demanding privacy. One afternoon, Judith caught Margaret hastily hiding a packet of herbal tea in her handbag. When Thomas presents the Digitalis lab report, Judith breaks down, realizing Caroline was telling the truth all along. When the defense tries to discredit her aged memory, Judith fiercely replies that she will never forget the face of a frightened mother. She then shares Caroline's final message: "If anything happens to me, tell Emily she was always loved." Following a recess, Anne Vale testifies, bringing the diary of her late mother, Beatrice. The diary documents decades of corruption and reveals Beatrice's deep fear of Margaret, noting, "Margaret knows where everything is buried." Despite the defense's repeated objections, the pattern of abuse becomes undeniable. Later, the prosecution plays a newly restored audio recording of Eleanor Ashford. Eleanor's voice states that Margaret keeps copies of everything, evidence that will eventually destroy her. Eleanor begs for Emily's forgiveness for watching from afar and finding her courage too late. For the first time in the trial, Margaret looks nervous, her finger tapping anxiously against the table. As the day's proceedings conclude, Emily silently walks through the crowd of reporters with Sophie and Oliver by her side. When they finally reach the car, Emily exhales deeply, telling Oliver that her mother finally had witnesses today. Oliver smiles softly and corrects her. No. Today, the whole country became her witness. The following morning, beneath clear skies, the confidence surrounding Margaret Whitmore begins to fade. The prosecution calls Dr. Michael Evans, a retired forensic toxicologist, who testifies that Caroline Carter's medical records strongly matched chronic digitalis poisoning. He states that the combination of preserved tea leaves, recordings, and witness testimonies provides overwhelming medical probability of foul play. Next, Mr. Harris, the bakery owner, testifies about Emily's constant exhaustion, hunger, and fear of spending money on herself due to Margaret's control. He tells the jury that if someone as kind as Emily calls another person dangerous, he believes her, bringing Emily to silent tears of gratitude. During the lunch recess, Thomas Reed reveals that the police have successfully restored the cassette tape, labeled Richard. When played in court, the tape reveals a chilling conversation between Margaret and her late husband, Richard Whitmore. They discuss keeping insurance and ensuring the Ashford girl never inherits by using Daniel to get close to her. When Richard questions what happens if Eleanor changes her will, Margaret coldly replies that old women die. When Richard warns against using poison again, Margaret simply says to pray. Eleanor obeys. The devastating audio leaves the courtroom in stunned silence, and for the first time, Margaret appears truly vulnerable and asks to speak privately with her solicitor. Later that afternoon, an exhausted Daniel is recalled to the stand. He confesses that his mother orchestrated his relationship with Emily, targeting her before they even met because she was poor, easy to influence, and unlikely to ask questions. Emily's heart breaks completely as she realizes her entire marriage was just another calculated move on Margaret's board. Daniel admits he loved Emily, but recognizes it was a toxic love taught by his mother, based on possession and expecting unearned forgiveness. Hearing this, Emily feels no anger, only a profound sadness that Daniel finally understands what he destroyed. As court adjourns, Emily ignores the press and tells Oliver that, for the first time, she feels she is truly becoming all right. Unnoticed by them, Margaret watches from the courthouse window. For the first time in decades, Margaret Whitmore is genuinely afraid. Her 40 years of lies are collapsing witness by witness, but she knows that one final, devastating secret still remains hidden. A secret that, if revealed, will change everything the world believes about the Ashford family forever. On the morning before closing arguments, Thomas Reed presents a final, shocking document discovered by Grace in the National Archives, Rose's certified birth record. It reveals that Henry Ashford was legally documented as Rose's father, but he had the record sealed through legal influence. This means Rose was legally Henry's daughter with full inheritance rights, a secret that Margaret, Richard, and Sir Adrian Vale hid for decades to protect the Ashford fortune from collapsing long before Eleanor changed her will. Upon seeing this proof of concealed fraud, Margaret is visibly shocked, and her request for a recess is denied as the prosecution rests. During closing arguments, the defense barrister attacks the witnesses and accuses Emily of using the stories to justify her enormous inheritance. Before Thomas can object, Emily stands and calmly addresses the courtroom, stating that her mother was dead when she was a penniless baker and remains dead now. She declares that money did not create her grief, and even if Eleanor Ashford had left her nothing, she would still demand to know why her mother begged for her life. Her powerful words silence the defense, and the judge schedules the verdict for the following morning. That evening, Emily, Sophie, Grace, Thomas, Mr. Hale, Maeve, David, Anne, and Oliver gather at Ashford House, joined by Mr. Harris, who brings warm food. Instead of discussing legal strategies, they share human stories about Eleanor, filling the house with warmth and laughter. Later, Emily walks into the rose garden where Oliver joins her. When she confesses her fear that justice might not feel like enough, Oliver gently explains that while justice closes a case, love keeps people alive. As dawn touches the white roses, Emily realizes that this chosen family is the greatest inheritance Eleanor ever left her. In a silent courtroom, the judge delivers a guilty verdict against Margaret Whitmore, citing her decades of manipulation, concealment of evidence, and criminal conduct. Stripped of her pride and looking merely tired, Margaret turns to Emily and says she won, but Emily replies that her mother finally did. Margaret receives a life sentence, leaving Emily with the profound relief of a burden finally set down. Outside, Emily delivers a powerful statement to the press, declaring that the trial was never about money. It was about truth, marginalized women, and the ordinary people who finally refused to stay silent. Over the following months, Ashford House is completely transformed into the Caroline Carter House for Women's Truth and Recovery, alongside the Rose Atwood Children's Wing and the Lily Marsh Scholarship. Grace and Mr. Hale remain dedicated to the house, while Sophie becomes the executive director. Oliver continues his restoration work, and Daniel, having finished his treatment, exchanges a final peaceful letter of closure with Emily before quietly remarrying. Years later, on a warm summer afternoon, Emily and Oliver stand in the garden with their daughter, Caroline Lily Rose Bennett. When the little girl asks why there are so many roses, Emily explains that every flower remembers someone who refused to disappear. Together, the family plants a new rosebush in the earth. Looking at the vibrant, fearless home Ashford House has become, filled with women's voices and children's laughter, Emily smiles. She realizes that the greatest inheritance is not what is left behind, but what one brave person chooses to rebuild, and for the first time in her life, she feels completely at home. The end. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Thank you very much.